Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Triggered For. You knew it was coming. This is from the next generation. It's Birthright Part 2. You knew they wouldn't leave you hanging at Part 1. Back for Part 2. Hey, you want more of this? You want Part 2s, 3s, and 4s of all that we do here on IABTB? Follow us on Facebook. It's All Been Triggered For. Sounds just like it's spelled, just like it sounds just like it's spelled. Or, hey, become a Patreon member. Patreon.com/IBD. Not only do you get us, you get the stuff from the mothership. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Lots of fun stuff over there. They got a little thing called Universe Journey, but lots of other cool stuff. I think if you like our shenanigans, you're going to love the shenanigans over there, and you're going to love the bonus stuff. So, yeah, that's that. And this is that. This is Birthright Part 2, and It's All Been Triggered For.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
The following podcast took place between 12 o'clock and 1 a.m.
1 p.m.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk Birthright Part 2 once Keith stops making jokes about the reminders I sent him that the podcast was starting. I love it. I love the 24 reference. It's been too long without 24. But let's talk about Birthright Part 2, the Next Generation episode. What are your first impressions?
No, I'm kidding. I was
in agreement, so.
Yeah, me too.
Wow. Well, I guess it's how this one's probably going to go. No, I liked it primarily because I think it's a good shift. And not that Worf hasn't had a Worf episode per se, but this is much more of a, I would say, like a Picard or Riker level role. I mean, for that much of the episode, and is a very kind of leading man feel to it. I have some mixed feelings about the story itself, which we can get into eventually, of course. But I liked the structure of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I had similar reactions to Jimmy's of. Yeah, as I feel like Part 2 we're always disappointed. Other than Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, of course. But yeah,
exception that proves the rule.
I felt kind of the same way. I still thought there were some interesting things here, but a lot of uninteresting things. And so I just felt like there were stakes, but not really. And I guess that's the theme we're on for this week. And I feel like next week, similarly. But to go all the way back to where I started with what Keith said, yeah, maybe this is why they make everything about Picard and Data, is because when we focus on one character for an episode, they're usually not great. And, they're great in the ensemble, but... Yeah.
I would disagree there. I don't think it's Michael Dorn's acting ability that made this not great. I think it's the writing. I think you need to write for these actors.
Yes, I agree with you completely there.
And they do a terrible job writing for Michael Dorn and Gates McFadden. And actually, they don't always do a terrible job writing for Michael Dorn. There's some really interesting Worf stuff. I do think the Deep Space Nine writers figure out how to write for him better than Next Gen writers did. I like him better on DS9, honestly. But yeah, it's not his fault. It's just a lackluster episode. And I blame the writing entirely. Yeah. I think it wasn't quite, it was written by Renee Echevarria, who's one of the regulars, and yet it felt like he didn't quite understand the culture and the characters all that well, to the point where, I don't know, it wasn't bad. Everything felt a little off to me in the behavior and the way things unfolded.
If this was a spinoff or a backdoor pilot, that would have never been picked up.
Yeah.
Unless he and Bael got together. But,
maybe that. We start out in this prison population, and my theory that Data's plot would not continue into Part 2 proves correct, because other than a couple very, very brief scenes on the Enterprise, it's all on this planet.
Yeah.
We're told that the Romulans were going to trade these prisoners, and then I guess even though they'd been dealing with Klingons for 100 years, found out that Klingons wouldn't trade prisoners all of a sudden, and then they were just going to let them go. But it's the Klingons. They're like, no, keep us prisoner. They're like, okay. And then the Romulan Council's like, sure, if you want to give up your career and watch them, that's fine. And none of that feels consistent to what the Romulans are.
No, that's the arbitrary lines part of my short review of the episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of arbitrary lines, and maybe it's just me as a viewer, but I'm like, man, I would rather leave there and get killed than live my life in that colony, whether I was a Romulan or a Klingon. And I don't understand. They tried to explain it in some other convoluted way, but it's like, why don't? Because the Romulan leader, Cuthbert or whatever his name was, threatens him with,
Tokoth.
Well, yeah, that's it, Kokoth. Don't try to escape. What are you gonna do if I try to escape? You're gonna kill me? No, we won't kill you. Okay, so what's gonna happen if I escape? I don't understand where you're going with this.
Yeah, they just bring him back and let him keep wandering around the place, but now we're going to keep an eye on you.
Right.
So the Romulan leader, Tokoth, was played by Alan Scarf. I don't recall us talking about him in the first episode, probably because I don't remember him being in the first episode. Was he in the first episode?
I think so.
Which one?
Oh, I guess he was not. He wasn't in part one. The Romulan leader. He was in the episode Data's Day playing Admiral Mendak. But he was only in part 2 here. He will be in an episode of Voyager and a couple episodes of The Outer Limits. Best known for Lethal Weapon 3, Andromeda, Double Impact, Kingdom Hospital. The whole way they're trying to keep the prisoners prisoner. I get that at this point, the Klingons and the Romulans are kind of living together peacefully, except it seems like only Tokoth has taken a Klingon bride. The rest of the Romulan guards are just like, we're fine just staying here without spouses or kids.
Right.
Which doesn't make much sense. And the Klingons, I get why Gural, played by Christine Rose, we talked about her last time, who fell in love with Tokoth, which may very well have been a little that syndrome that prisoners get. Stockholm, there we go. And have Bael, but what is keeping the rest of the Klingons there?
Right.
They all decided they were fine. What about the story of the other 30 Klingons that said, I'm not standing for this, and they murdered them? Where's that part of the story? Like, these were the 10 Klingons that said, okay, we'll stay and have kids with you.
Well, you guys might have missed this because they only mentioned it about 23 times in the opening 2 minutes of the episode. Dishonor was a big deal. That was what they were very concerned about. Dishonor.
Right.
I wanted everyone to do the Pee Wee Herman, like, every time they said dishonor, because I was like,
but as long as their dishonor is a secret, then it's not really dishonor, right?
That's right.
They're gardening with a spear, and I get the whole very visual metaphor of they turn swords into plowshares type thing, but honestly, they've been there for how many years? They couldn't have got a more efficient gardening tool?
Yeah.
From where?
They could make it a replicator. They get supplies regularly from the Romulans.
Nope.
They couldn't send them a hoe because the spear doesn't
replicators only make food. Well. They don't. That's part of their punishment.
But they're allowed to keep their weapons as long as you only use them for gardening. If not, we're gonna smack your hand and just watch you a little bit closer.
The camp made no sense to me. I just could not fathom what was going on.
Well, I think
or why.
And here's something that occurred. Something that occurred to me is Worf very easily could have been among this number because he was at Kittimer, the same place they were all taken from.
Right.
But he was not one of the unconscious they kept as prisoner. He was still buried in the rubble and dug out by Starfleet and adopted by a human. So very easily Worf could have been among this. And I think if they'd leaned into that more, like there but for you go I type situation.
Yeah.
And make it more personal for him. And, or, he recognized one of the older Klingons as, oh, you were my father's best friend. I remember you from being a kid. They could have tied it in such a way that would have been really interesting and intriguing. And instead, or even had like one of the Duras families there. And now Worf knows the Duras were in on the attack. And that can, there are so many ways to make this interesting that they just chose to ignore.
It made him like the old guy / I'm the one here to rescue you and restore Klingon history and all of it.
Right.
And the way he was dressed, which Michael Dorn, good looking guy, buff guy, he looked sharp in the turtleneck and everything, but he looked like Klingon James Bond or something.
I would have taken Klingon James Bond. What a much better alternate episode.
Yes, please. But yeah.
It almost reminded me of, since you brought that up, like Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So he's there to be that spiritual kind of, hey, I've learned all these things. I'm here to just be very calm and that kind of thing. So,
and they also kind of touched on, but didn't delve into it, like the Klingons not knowing the war is over, kind of like the Japanese guys they found on the island after World War II was over that thought the war was still going on, but they didn't actually do anything with that. So it was kind of pointless to bring up.
To go to your point, Keith, about him being Luke Skywalker, like I wrote down at some point. Because he's talking all this mumbo jumbo, and I'm like, is this like Scientology? No offense, Scientologists. I mean, I think you're just as legit as any other religion, but I was like, But then I was like, wait a minute, or is this Jedi?
No, unless you want to get sued, I guess.
Yeah. But
I think Scientology is absolutely just as legit as any other religion. That's because I see no legitimacy in any of them.
I made this argument.
You double swerved me on that one. I was.
They were denied. They have to pay taxes, and maybe they don't anymore. But there was a big case when I was in law school, and I was like, I don't understand, because how is this any crazier than these other ones? And maybe not half the class, but I don't know if you know, law school. Some pretty conservative. Not everyone agreed with me on that, but I was like, no, this makes just as much sense. But then the more he talked, I'm like, no, he sounds like a stuffy Jedi from the prequels. And it's just like, no, I'm not interested in this either. I'm like, why don't you talk about, hey, I'm in the Starfleet thing? And I just think, to me,
that would have been a good idea too, actually.
The whole Klingon, the way he was talking, especially in this episode and lots of times, just seems so... They talk about the past and they talk about all these things, and I think I've talked about this before, where it seems like we're just talking about things that somebody said a long time ago and trying to perpetuate that and not examining it all. What we're doing right now. At least that's still my feeling about. I shouldn't say all the time, but this one took me back to more simplistic, to me, Klingon things like, and he says it many times, a Klingon would never. Klingons don't do this. It's like, okay, what does that mean? And that's when I was really like, a Jedi wouldn't do this. Oh, he even says, I think he says something about how love works. And, the whole Jedi thing in the prequels was a Jedi can't love. And he pretty much said something like that, which doesn't make any sense, especially since we end up in a quote unquote love story here, which I'll get into later. But anyway, sorry, I've jumped ahead. Let's go back.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about any. But see, the thing about Worf always saying, like, I know what the other Klingons do and all that. Like, he's already found out that the other Klingons don't respect his honor and stuff the way he sees it anyway. Like,
right.
It's been an ongoing theme.
That's true.
That he's like alone among Klingons.
I appreciated what they were trying to do as far as the it's sort of like they're going for like more of like a colonization thing.
Yeah,
I think where what Worf's role was supposed to be coming in, or what he was supposed to be representing, coming in as some sort of enlightener figure, like a liberator, saying, "Look what we've taken from you."
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that, as you were saying, is it kind of went against his character in certain ways. I wasn't really able to put my finger on it until I heard you guys kind of going through that. And yeah, it doesn't make sense that he wouldn't. Well, let me back up. So one of the things that was bothering me about it too was just thinking about the way that the racial coding of things they usually do with aliens cultures like this, and of course it's like equating cultural practices to this sort of genetic instinct and animalistic thing that all Klingons must do this monolithically, and that that was a little troublesome because of the way that the way they usually do these things for allegories. So they have Worf coming in as the protagonist in this situation. He's there to essentially liberate them. And I don't feel like, I mean, maybe the way they ended it was supposed to be some sort of compromise between them, but it's not like he was completely in the right here. It wasn't as much of a cut and dry. These people have come in here to deceive you, and they've trapped you and done all this stuff. This was actually their opportunity for utopia in that sense. I think they ended up getting to the correct solution, but the way they were getting there didn't seem. Yeah, it was a little too inconsistent, and the messaging was just a little. It didn't feel. Yeah, it didn't feel like Worf was going in the right direction with that. Mm-hmm. It's bad that you guys are here getting along. You should be hating each other. That's injecting that sort of message, and they were kind of playing it as if he was right in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree, Keith, because it was a weird thing where he was like, when the way he reacts to Bael having pointy ears is like, what are you talking about? Okay, you hate the Romulans, but obviously you already knew that there was this Gene Roddenberry would be rolling over in his grave if he was dead. Oh wait, he was dead by then. So this is something that Gene Roddenberry would be rolling over his grave about if one of his characters. One of the main characters seems like a racist. Yeah,
it's like, God, ew.
That didn't ring true for me either. It was another arbitrary line. And it also makes me care less about the episode. I mean, I already didn't care that much about the stakes. There's only so many prison camp stories to tell. Like last week, like I said, I wanted a Hogan's Heroes version of this. Mm-hmm. But But then, I just get into that whole relationship now. Beyond the racistness stuff is racistness. He says he never thought he could love a Romulan. I'm like, hold up there, Captain. What do you mean by love?
Just met her.
Yeah.
So that brings two questions to mind. One, is this relationship with Bael age appropriate?
No, she's like, she comes across as like 16, 17.
Right. And they give her some Klingon title or something of a woman just coming of age kind of a thing. And then
they just sort of found it in the box. It might not even been ready. Or actually, so
well, and given Alexander's growth rate, she's probably only like 7 or 8.
Oh, come on! Well, we saw the age of her parents. I mean, that implies that they probably had her quite a while.
Well, she's under 25, right? Because that's about how long they've been there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Early 20s at the latest, whereas Worf is at least mid 30s, early 30s, mid 30s. He's at least 10 years older than her.
I'm trying to find what they called her. But I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, so first of all, that raises the red flag.
It's not the numerical age so much as the maturity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just about to say that word.
If she's like 22 and he's like 33, that still isn't ridiculous. Like I know couples that are that far apart. It's more or further, but they'll work really well. But it's the fact that she seems so naive and immature that it seems like Worf's grooming her or being very inappropriate with her.
It immediately, and of all people, me, I'm the one that's like, ooh, I don't know if I like this. And so that's part one is like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. And then part two is later, and I'm going to bring up the episode I always bring up, Requiem for Methuselah. Not Balance of Terror.
That's your favorite episode of the original series.
Requiem for Methuselah and Balance of Terror, 1 and 2. That relationship at the end of that, as Keith, you'll remember, forget.
Yes. Ironically.
That relationship, I always say, doesn't feel earned. The moment with Spock is fantastic nonetheless. But I felt that way here too, because all of a sudden Worf's talking like they've got this relationship and everything. And I'm like, I know we haven't been there for every day and every minute of it, but I feel like, whoa, buddy, you're jumping the gun here.
He hasn't been gone that long, or he hasn't been there that long.
Right. And so I'm like, hold up. And then at the end of the episode, we'll never see her again. He'll never see her again. Yeah. So what happened? You were in love? And then, no.
I mean, that is my alternate episode, is she should have joined the crew. Like, just don't have to see her all the time. But, so there's an actual relationship there.
Yeah, that would have been...
Otherwise, why do the whole fall in love, I love you, all that? Like, it's just too much.
I completely agree.
Well, you I think answered your own question right there. They needed to add that. The love thing, they were building that up. And she kind of put the word in his mouth, honestly. He's like, what's he going to say? Like, well, not love. But,
that could have been a very uncomfortable scene. I love you. Oh, thank you.
That's a big matzo ball you're putting out there.
I mean, and also, I mean, the way that she used the word, again, to nitpick here, she used it more in the general sense of like not being hate in a way, where they kind of wasn't necessarily the straightforward. Again, the naivete.
Very, very naive.
So Worf gets his own apartment because they have extra apartments here, and the bed looks okay, but that blanket looked about as uncomfortable and scratchy as it was possible to be, and the ceilings were extremely low. I mean, I know most of the prisoners were short. Yeah. Why did the Romulan High Council let the jailer keep this whole setup? Like, I just didn't get that. I guess I already mentioned that.
Yeah, and why did he like it so much? I mean, what was in it for him, really? It actually, I ended up arriving at a spot with that, too, because at one point he says, what we have built here. And I'm like, what have you built here? It's a permanent summer camp. And then it dawned on me that he is kind of like a cult figure. Like, I think he's like a Jim Jones, who's kind of like, no, we have this community here. And it's like one of those, for lack of a better term, hippie cult kind of things, which is not accurate at all, but
a commune of some sort.
Yeah, David Koresh, whoever, out in the they're on a remote planet, out in the middle of nowhere. They have their own world. They don't want anybody. They don't want the people in there to know about the outside world or to visit there, and vice versa. So then it kind of made sense to me. Okay, that's his angle. Yeah, I mean, it's still not awesome, but it it made that finally made sense to me, even though it still didn't make for a great episode. But I could at least it's like, okay, I can buy this guy being crazy, or he loves the power and adulation.
See, I didn't get that feeling from it. I feel like that there was a lot of people who would, I think the resolution to it as they were leaving kind of tied things up in that sense, kind of really kind of capped the motive there. This is just a guy. I mean, a man who had already lived a fairly full life up to a certain point. This is his retirement from the military. Same thing with the Klingons that were there, who decided to stay, the adults. For them, this is probably what they would have been doing anyway. I mean, if they found a place to retire to.
They were colonists. They weren't military warriors.
Who the
Klingons that were taken prisoner. They weren't like on a warriors. No, they weren't on a warship. They were at Kittimer colony.
Right. Culturally, they were all warriors, though. They had armor with them. They were trying to fight back. The whole story there. Anyway, the point is that they were at a point where they were ready to retire to this remote place, and to them, this probably would have seemed like a haven or a paradise. The difference is that this wouldn't be. It's not like this is some place on Earth where you could have an influx of people occasionally or do whatever, but to them, it's done. But if they're having kids who are growing up in that with nothing else, then that's the problems were highlighted there. I'm kind of glad that they could have gotten to that a little. I think they could have gotten to that a different way than the whole. You're a Klingon and you need to feel all this warrior pride and do all these other things, and
barely evolved from pushing a wheel down the street with a stick from the 1800s here on Earth in America is this bizarre game of throwing a slender stake through a moving circle.
Well, Worf made it seem like it was so hard and it was supposed to help with hunting, but then Talk tries it and his one time of a little bit of coaching. And he can do it just fine.
It was natural.
Talk, played by Sterling Macer Jr., best known for Where the Crawdads Sing, a big movie earlier this year. Oh, yeah. Or last year by the time this comes out. Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, Double Take, Wicked. He was in a few episodes of Bones, Lincoln Heights. So he doesn't have a lot of credits, but he's been around for a while. This was not his first credit, though.
I did find they don't refer to Bael as a certain age or whatever. They just say it's her necklace. That is a Janak. It is given to a daughter who has come of age, old enough to take a mate. That is the wording. So.
And she hasn't been given it yet, so she's not old enough to take a mate yet.
Or her mother was still hiding it.
Yeah.
That too, yeah.
The one thing I do wonder is why they do have all that equipment. Was all that confiscated with them when they were taken from the planet? I guess
they get regular supplies from the Romulans, but yes, that stuff must have been taken from the planet because that was a Klingon game,
right?
Yeah, why'd they take their stuff too and not just the prisoners? Somebody was carrying that in a satchel when they were kidnapped. That's a great point, Keith. I
wish I hadn't thought of that now. The armor kind of makes sense. Maybe the necklace is there for a number of reasons.
She was wearing it, yeah.
They sent a moving starship back for that. The Mayflower starship to pick up all their stuff.
So we mentioned earlier that Worf escapes. They don't lock him up. They just assign Talk to watch him. And they don't even try to capture the pilot, even though at that point they had to have seen the ship.
Right.
They had to. James Cromwell in his very brief appearance. But then the old Klingon just tells Talk to watch Worf. What happens when Talk needs to go to the bathroom? What happens when Talk goes to sleep? You need rotating guards, right?
And speaking of James Cromwell, it's that was one thing I was really disappointed about. I was like, that's it? That's it? We're done?
Yep.
What the hell?
Don't worry, James Cromwell will be back in Trek.
Yes, he will. Strange that Worf escaped into a TOS jungle set because it looked like one of the old soundstage sets. I was just like,
it's from 25 years ago, right?
It's going to be easy to find them there. Yeah,
more than 25, over 30.
That just shows that they haven't evolved at all.
Well, from when the Kittimer incident.
Yeah.
Right.
That knife really got very evenly rusty in the drawer. It was perfectly. I don't know. It felt kind of ridiculous. The Worf brings up the Kahless story again. We keep getting mentions of Kahless. Kahless. There will be more to come on Kahless. And I'm not just talking about this novel, Star Trek The Next Generation Kahless. But there will be more to Kahless in The Next Generation TV show.
Is there a question about the story? Yeah. Do you know any other stories that you can tell us that aren't this one?
Nope, just Kalis. Kalis is the only story I know. He's my only. Worf is just obsessed with Kalis. It's like his personal hero.
When he's doing his Klingon Tai Chi, and he's the Makbara, and then he says the form clears the mind and centers the body. I just thought this is the worst typo video I've ever seen. I just, what is this? But yeah.
Did you notice there was a baby and lots of what appeared to be teen kids around Mayal's age and Talk's age, but there weren't any kids in between?
Right. Yeah. Yes, I did. What happened?
Is that because the older generation were now too old to reproduce and the younger ones hadn't started yet? Or
maybe?
That's a good question.
But you'd think they would have taken Klingons from a variety of ages. I don't know.
What do you mean?
Like their prisoners would represent a variety of ages. So yes, some of them are too old to reproduce, but they'd still be younger prisoners. I would think. Maybe they only took adults. And maybe they only took adults of a certain age. I don't know.
I'm sure it would have had something to do with dishonor, is why that didn't happen.
Worf talks about how the story of Kalis, he finds new truths every time. Definitely sounds like an evangelist at that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
In a bad way.
Yes.
Well, that was implied by saying it sounds like an evangelist. What other bad way is there besides bad?
Sorry, just to get back to I'm making the mistake, not a mistake of looking at the transcript. It's good. Just to drive home how terrible Worf sounds, he says to Bael, how could your mother mate with a Romulan? And Bael says, why shouldn't she? He says, it is an obscenity.
Yeah.
So later, when he comes back to apologize, he does the non-apology. He says, I am sorry if I upset you. It's like, that's not an apology. You are in love with her. Get out of here, jerk.
What they don't deal with, what they should deal with, is Worf deeply hates Romulans and doesn't trust them because they murdered his parents. And not just any Romulans murdered his parents. Tokoth murdered his parents. Right. Where is his revenge mission? Where is his anger and ire? All it expresses is, nope, I can't sleep with a girl that's half Romulan. Well, he should be trying to murder Tokoth.
Did they establish that Tokoth actually did do anything, or was he just the jailer?
He was part of the attack on Kittimer, so maybe he personally didn't murder Worf's parents, but he was part of the attack that murdered Worf's parents.
I feel like Worf's parents are becoming like Bruce Wayne's parents.
The scene where Talk goes hunting and gets his warrior blood all pumping and comes back, that confuses me because what we know of Worf's backstory is he grew up on Earth in Russia, and he could not control the warrior blood. Like, it was just an innate part of him that came up. So none of these kids had that issue when they were younger, the way Worf did as a child.
Good question.
Is Worf in the right to disrupt this society? I feel is a question we should ask.
Yeah.
Because he totally destroys the society. Well, I'm not sure. He should have just left. He thinks he's doing a good thing by opening their eyes, but is he?
Right.
All right. Well, hold a couple things. He tried to leave, but couldn't. They decided to keep him there. Right. The other thing is sort of like that. What was that episode earlier in this series? You know, where they found the planet that was in the dome, and essentially, or the
Masterpiece Society.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It's sort of like that. I mean, but I would say the third point would be that he might have been doing that as a gambit to get out too. I mean, he has no other choice. I mean, he's strapped there. And I could see him sort of playing some sort of manipulation angles, especially with Talk.
So he's just mad because they're keeping him locked up, so he's going to destroy their society.
I wouldn't say mad, but I think this was still a strategy on his part. I mean, it worked.
Yeah.
I thought that a little bit too, Keith, because I also thought, like, what the hell does he do now? He's got to figure out a way to get out of there. But I feel like the way he talked, and again, I think this goes down to the very end of the episode too, but if we take him at his Klingon word, which they don't lie, as we which I don't know about that, but if this is all just a gambit to get him off the planet and all that stuff, then cool. But he just comes off heavy-handed.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's necessary for all of that to come out. Like, he thinks he's better than those people, which
he sure does.
Yeah, I think he believed what he was saying. But I still do think that he decided to really try to. It's like, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
Maybe I mean there probably was some probably evangelism behind it, in the sense of I is my duty to educate these people where I see these poor kids don't know these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope he
projecting his own problems, his own past.
Like, I can't see him putting in his diary, "Hey, I did something great today." I mean, it's not like he Lobster Fest at Red Lobster. It's I think at the end of the day, he's like, I did what I had to do to get out of there, and there's different ways to open people's eyes, I guess. And speaking of a Klingon's word, what does that mean? Because we know they lie. We know Klingons that have lied.
Plenty of them.
Yeah,
but this one old guy appears to have the same honor Worf does.
I think there might be some sort of semantical distinction if you literally say, "I'm giving you my word that I'm going to do this or that," as opposed to misleading someone, for a strategy, or cheating or something. Yeah, what was that?
If you believe it, the George Costanza. If you believe it, it's not a lie. So at the end, he tells Picard about, "No, sir, there was no prison camp. Those young people are survivors of a vessel that crashed in the cryo system 4 years ago. No one survived Kittimer." So where's the Klingon word here? But at the same time, I thought, and Picard says, "I understand." So is Picard saying, I get what you're dropping here," or is he just like?
That was my impression of the way he said it.
We skipped over a bunch, but yes,
yeah, we did. Sorry,
that's okay. Picard, it definitely read that Picard knew Worf was lying and is going to support him in the lie. But man, they needed to have a conversation later in private where Picard demands to know the truth.
I agree.
Instead of just taking him at his word, which Picard was like, "Yep, that's fine. Let's drop it. You're good."
Yeah. I'll give them credit for that. Those last two lines, especially of showing that relationship they have, and in 2 words from Patrick from Picard. So anyway,
I agree. It was an interesting choice there to have Picard basically acknowledge, "I know you're lying to me. I accept it."
Yep.
And why did Worf beam up in the last group? Why wasn't he part of the first group? It was just like him and Bael, or him and Talk, and they were the last ones to beam up. Didn't make much sense.
Picard would have probably been familiar with why Worf was, the purpose of the trip and what he was looking for, and also, his history with being the negotiator during that ceremony or whatever. He was, pretty closely involved with the Worf's family being dishonored, and he would be familiar with the reasons why. So
yeah, but there just wasn't enough there to get all the way to that leap. It was too much of a leap, I thought. But also, when Beverly scanned Worf and she said, "Oh, he's fine," did she not find the thing in his neck that could still explode, or did they take that out?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they said that it was going to explode, or just to track him.
Oh, you're right. Whatever. To track him. So now Tokoth can still track Worf. We need to follow up on that. There's an alternate episode sequel, part 3. Tokoth hunts down Worf.
He and his wife, Tokoth and his wife, every night probably are like, "What do you think Worf's doing right now? Where do you think he is?"
Yeah. So jumping back to where Bael is telling Worf, like, "I wish you'd never come." So she really is saying ignorance is bliss, right? She doesn't want to know the truth.
Probably not.
Tokoth certainly made a lot of excuses for killing. He's like, "Guys, I gotta kill him. He's giving me no choice. You all understand, right? You know me. I wouldn't do this unless I had to."
Right. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But of course, it was too late. Worf had already corrupted Talk. Tokoth's wife has Galrod eyes. They were kind of buggy.
Yeah. Just to go back to that Tokoth speech, that's where he says, "What we have built together would be destroyed by this man." Mm-hmm. And then Worf says, "Those are eloquent words." No, they're not.
No, but he was told to say that. That's how it was written.
Okay.
Worf swears all the kids to secrecy. Okay, I guess we're supposed to believe that nobody's going to leak. Somebody's going to leak.
Right.
But most of them have honor, but somebody's going to leak. And then I can't remember who it was. I think it's the old Klingon guy, but he's like, "Okay, the supply ship's coming. They're going to take you, and you're all going to leave." And it's like, how do you already have that plan set up? This is all just happening in the moment. And you already know the supply ship's going to take you away, and it's all going to work out.
Well, I remember Talk said that.
And then the fact that the supply ship was, first of all, a full Romulan warbird, not a little supply vessel, and it was fine with just escorting them back to the Federation.
Well, we were on our way. We were on our way to give a doctor a physical on a planet. So come on aboard. We'll take you with us.
Alternate episode.
Mine is you kind of touched on this right at the top. Data's dreams. I wish we stuck with that. I would have rather gone there.
We'll explore at least one more Data dream before,
or at least have that to cut back to.
Yeah. Fashion. They had very different types of ridges among the various Klingons.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I like that too.
Oh, and the other thing I should mention is this episode was directed by Dan Curry, who is a visual effects producer. He was a visual effects producer on Next Gen for 106 episodes, 145 DS9, 135 Voyager, 8 episodes of Enterprise, episode of that fan Star Trek Phase 2, Moonlight, Chuck, The Gifted. So that's what he does. He only has 3 directing credits, and this is one of them.
That explains the ridges.
It's this episode and then 2 shorts that he did. But the rest of his career is visual effects. So I thought it was interesting they let their visual effects guy try his hand at directing. I don't think the directing was bad. I don't think that's where the blame lies here.
I agree.
So you're saying that there needs to be blame that is assigned for the
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody
needs to pay. And by pay, I mean we're going to have somebody follow you around for an hour or 2 before they get frustrated and walk off, and then you're good.
Somebody has dishonored the Star Trek franchise, and they must be punished for this.
Yup. So let's get to the rankings then. Who was your annoyance in Birthright Part 2?
Mine was Worf Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, I'm going with Worf as well. I mean, there are contenders, certainly other contenders, but just the way he handled it and his holier-than-thou attitude, which is classic Worf. It's not out of character for him to believe he's right.
He treated Bael. Bael didn't deserve that on any level.
That's true. He took a bad quality of his and then exaggerated it in this episode.
He was not age appropriate. He creepily watched her bathe. Then if she has her ears covered the whole time and he never sees them, what happens then?
Well, she's only going to have one vagina when she pulls down her pants.
Oh, well, that's how.
I'm assuming Klingons have 2 since the males have 2 penises.
It just like everything else, it's binary. Everything is binary.
I want to say, to be fair, it's very difficult to watch someone bathe without seeming creepy. So
that's true. That's
not really his fault.
This is true.
I mean, I can't argue that.
There, you are correct.
Wow. Keith, who was your annoyance?
I actually ended up going with Worf too, because the obscenity line alone was enough. So,
yeah.
Who are you having a drink with?
I didn't want to have a drink with anybody on the planet. That the Tokoth, is that right? Maybe, but I ended up, oddly enough, Beverly's on in the episode for 25 seconds. I was like, hey, what's she doing after this? So I went with Beverly.
Fair enough. I actually am going to go with Tokoth. He does not seem like a typical Romulan. Let's talk about what's going on and why you're making the choices you're making with Worf, and just, I don't know, he seemed like an interesting character if underdeveloped in this episode.
Yeah, I was going to say Tokoth, but I might actually go with one of the other Romulan guards just to figure out what's going on there. Like, how did this happen?
They're like, we're all roped into his little fling with this Klingon.
The benefits are good. Yeah, I didn't have the best grades in school, so
there's no danger of dying here because they only use their spears for hoeing. They don't use them for killing.
We get as much PTO as we want.
So, ranking the episode, let's
just something about them calling it PTO makes it even stranger.
Sorry, space PTO.
Let's rank it better or worse than part 1. We'll just start with putting it against part 1.
I'm going to say below.
When I was watching it, I would have put it above. I actually felt pretty good about it for a bit, and then just going through and unpacking it. Yeah, no, I guess it has to go below.
Oh yeah, it definitely needs to go below. Below that right now is the quality of life. I would say below. Yeah. Face of the enemy.
I'm going to say I'm going below.
That's where Troy's forced to masquerade as a Romulan.
That one
That was
for
not
me
a great episode.
was at least crazy enough that I was
Yeah, that's
one
true.
was-
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
This one also dishonored me by being dull.
I'm tempted to go above Face the Enemy, but then I looked and below it is Fistful of Datas, and I want to go below Fistful of Datas. So,
Oh wow, yeah. We're getting close.
well, below that's Man of the People, where Troy gets old because that guy like messes with her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to go above that.
Me too.
I guess.
That's a good place to stop. I think this is the furthest apart we've ever seen a two-parter. Normally they're like back to back.
Yeah.
Next week we're going to Deep Space. We'll move along home to Deep Space Nine. For the episode Move Along Home, the Wadi from the Gamma Quadrant visit DS9, thereby making first contact with the Federation. When they catch Quark cheating, they let him off by playing a special game.
That just seems like a lot of, well, yeah. I guess it could be worse.
I hope they have
Special
stakes.
game. Yeah.
I hope there are stakes.
Until then, live long.
And honorably, which means without dishonor and prosper.
And plenty of stakes.
Grown up some stakes.
Yeah, you can't.
Hey.
You don't hunt. You don't hunt the stakes unless you intend to eat them. So
Those guys were good at. They were good at stripping that animal down. I mean,
Apparently.
impressive.
Apparently.
And then I should have done this on the podcast. I don't understand why he's like, get this out of here. I don't want to eat this. I'm eating this other meat right now. I don't want that in front of me. But
I think it's pretty. I think I would be pretty uncomfortable with
I guess I
a dead animal just being plopped right down there, skinned on the table. But
They got replicators. They don't
He
need
sounded like he wouldn't eat that. But
that's also quite possible. I mean, I think it's still more about just the visceral image of it too.
yeah,
I wouldn't feel like really appetized about it. Like, yeah, you know.
yeah.
I want my processed meat over here first.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah. If all my meat dishes were brought to me like that, I would probably be a vegetarian. You're probably right.
My first thought was, I bet ramen. Oh yeah, Romulans are vegetarians. I'm like, no,
Are they?
that's Vulcans.
No,
I wasn't sure the Vulcans were either. Well,
Yeah, Vulcans are vegetarians. At least most Vulcans are.
that was part of the split with the Romulans. They were vegetarians.
I mean, if the planet Earth decided that we're all going to be vegetarian, I might move to Romulus as well.
Yeah, that was the last straw.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?